I got a question this week about how to use requirement checks with measurements. So I thought I'd do a simple example here with the little red wagon configurator that's going to do exactly that. We'll put a measurement here between the axles and measure the wheelbase essentially of the wagon here, and then put some requirement checks on that to help guide the user toward better usage there. So with that, let's square this up, and I'm going to go and put that measurement in. And what I want to do here is I'm going to measure here from the point at the center of this end right here back to a similar one back here, right? So I'm going to grab that point back there. So we've got 1,000 millimeter wheelbase right now. And with that, yeah, let's do a couple things. In here right now, I have it set to save this as an associative measurement. So this will create an expression for this measurement. That's an important first step. We need an associative measurement that will update so that we can monitor that and do our requirement check relative to that expression. I also do want to see this one, so I'm going to turn on the annotation. We'll see an annotation persisted out here. In the expanded here, right, on the end of the scene dialog, we have the option in here to also associate a requirement here. And we can either do that with an existing requirement or do a new requirement here. In this case, I've got one prepared, and we'll create another one in a minute, okay? But this particular existing requirement here, we have one that is called recommended max wheelbase here, right? And this says that this expression or this wheelbase should be less than or equal to 1,200 millimeters out there. So I'm going to select that existing requirement and say OK, and that will associate that requirement there. And you see a little green check down there right now that's saying that this is passing that particular requirement, right? Our wheelbase is 1,000, so less than 1,200, so this is happy, this is green. So with all that in place there, again, we're going to save the expression, we're going to create an annotation down here, and it's going to be passing at the moment. And so we'll say OK, and we'll see there that we have our measurement. There's our annotation down there. It's normal color right now, and we can look in the requirements validation tool right now. Right now I have the show passed turned off. If we turn this on, what this will do is a couple things. We'll see these green ones here in the requirements list, right? The passing one. Sometimes we don't necessarily want to see all the passing stuff. We mostly want to see things if they're a problem, but we can leave this on for a minute so we can see some effects of that. So with this in place, again, it's going to be monitoring now that expression. That's the expression from our measurement. The value is there. It's going to be comparing that against the requirement, which is the upper line here, which is saying that whatever expression we choose needs to be less than 1,200, right? We can reuse these in a model. We can have the same requirement. If there's a particular requirement that applies in more than one place, we can have more than one requirement check that checks different expressions against the same requirement, right? So that's all in place. This particular one, if we look at this requirement, edit this requirement, we can see that this is set to be a warning right now, the severity. So it can be an error, can be a warning, can be just an informational thing. This one's set to be a warning. Error is going to be red, warning is going to be yellow, information is going to be blue, right? And we'll see the icons for those in just a minute. So this will be the warning. And again, we're going to define the requirement here. And again, the requirement is that the value of whatever we're checking needs to be, should be less than or equal to 1,200 millimeters, right? And then we can put in a description down below that says something like an unsupported wheelbase longer than 1,200 millimeters may allow undesirable body twisting, right, with this metal wagon here. Okay, so that's our requirement, and then we'll see that of course update. We'll also you'll notice we'll turn on a little requirement column here in the assembly navigator so that you can see whether the things are starting to fail there. And if we take our wheelbase here, for instance, and crank this up to something higher than 1,200, then of course we're going to start to see that it's turn yellow, right? We'll see both the annotation itself turn yellow. We'll also see a tag up here that steers us toward more information about that, right? And that tag will show us here again what the definition of the requirement is, what value we're checking against that, where that expression is coming from, and then again that description about the unsupported wheelbase might allow body twisting, right? So we can embed that kind of information, that kind of a check, in a model, any model, in a template model like this one, or in any other model to alert the next person who's editing the model if they're getting into an undesirable state. Okay. Now we can stack these as well, right? And we'll look for the worst case essentially. So this one right now is giving us a warning, right? And what we could do here is add another check, maybe that's out at 1500 millimeters, that says that once we get to 1500, we're going to get into a dangerous state, right? So we could have a more severe warning if we get out into that that range. So let's go ahead and do that, right? We have our measurement here still. We can come back to the requirements validation tools. This is in the HD3D tab right here. If we go back to the home here, it'll be this requirements validation one that we're looking at, right? So we'll go into that one. We can see that list of requirements. We can come in here and say that I want to create a new requirement here in this work part. And this particular one, this is going to be our say our max safe wheelbase, right? So that'll create a new requirement here that we're going to make an error this time, right? That says, for instance, that it needs to be less than or equal to 1500. And we could say may allow dangerous buckling or something like that. Okay. Good. So with that, that's going to create our second requirement there. Okay. This same expression, P59, is the one that we're going to compare this with. And so here we can come and say that I want to add a new check now relative to this requirement, right? The check name here, I'm going to leave that as the default A. The expression that we're going to check here now is that P59, right? And you notice we're getting the typing completion there, so we can see what those are. But we'll go ahead and say OK. That's going to stack that other one on top, right? Now here again, this is an example of where that past is not necessarily helpful to show those all the time, right? So I can turn off the past one there. And what this will do now is start to, and you see that hid that from the list up above, right? It's hiding it in both places there. But what? We'll leave it on just for fun. And what this will do now is again start to show us what's going on there, right? So right now the part is showing a warning, right? We've got one requirement results. The worst case here is showing us a warning on this guy. And if we come in now, say, and take that wheelbase and crank that up to something really big, then what we'll see is that start to fail, right? And so that other requirement now is failing as red. We're showing the worst case up here. And of course, we've turned the annotation red here as well, right? The background of the annotation. So the color here, the background here is driven by the requirement automatically, right? If we were going to do one of these as an informational, again, that would be a little blue eye. In fact, we could do that. We could come and say make that max safe there, edit that requirement, and instead of that being an error, we could make that an information here, for instance, for just a minute. That'll change that to blue, right? But at any rate, we don't want to. We want to have that color be automatic, right? So we can see what's going on. Good. And again, if we come back and edit this so that it goes back into a state where everything's happy, right? With a short wheelbase. This, of course, is a product template interface for this assembly here. Just a simple way to edit the parameters of this assembly in a meaningful, easy to understand way. As we bring this back down into an acceptable range here, then of course those checks are both happy, right? Those both go green, and so yeah, that's a simple example here of adding requirement checks to a measurement. Again, the colors of the measurement itself are driven by a couple of things. Actually, this might be interesting. If we look here in the measure settings, in the preferences there, we can go in and look at the display here, and we'll see that annotations, associative annotations here that are fixed at a timestamp here are going to be green. Ones that are not fixed at a timestamp are going to be purple, which apparently is what this one is. Non-associative ones are going to be pink on purpose, so we can tell that they're not associative, right? If we're looking at an annotation, we want to know whether it's associative or not. The background color, right now I've got that set to a user-defined gray, so that's the gray we're seeing right here. And then up above, these are those error and warning and info background colors, right? And so these colors are the things that are going to show up as we go into either that error state, that warning state, or that information state up there. So again, these are in the measure preferences. By default, this is red, yellow, blue. We've used that across checkmate and requirements validation and a bunch of places where we have that error and warning and information kind of state. So that's what's going on with the colors there. Again, the tags, we can choose to have those be always show the passing, or it may be a little cleaner to just show those when we hit an error state, right? So if we're doing that kind of a thing, then as we come in here and change this and get it into a state there in the middle, we'll get the one tag with the yellow. And again, as we head into the red zone there, then we'll start to see the red worst case there, and get the red color as well. Okay, and see both tags. Good. So that's some requirements validation with measurements. Again, really using the expression that's associated with the measurement, and I hope you find that useful.